writer, producer, performer Adam Zwar. As if that wasn't enough, he went on to create the incredibly successful Agony series for the ABC. Numerous versions: Agony Aunts, Agony Uncles, Agony of Life, Agony of Modern Manners, and so on.
Yeah, that was... I had a column in the Herald Sun called The Wise Guy, and that was all about it was all about being a modern man and everything. So based on that, the first series was Agony Uncles. It was just about guys talking about relationships. And I did 3 pilots for it, all funded myself before I actually kind of got the mix right. So having Sam Pang, who wasn't very well known at the time, but he was already the most popular comedian in Australia, even back in 2010. Like, yes. He was able to get Lawrence Mooney to come and do it. He was able to get the Elliots that, he said to Judith Lucy, come on, I'm doing it, you do it. And so I've got to thank him in many ways. That was really generous of him. And
well, if I were to list a bunch of funny and relevant Australians today, it would largely be the cast.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And it was really good for them too, because their festival shows would do well. And I was really grateful that our friend Steve Izard was able to do it. He was fabulous and so generous. I mean, because what you have to understand is at the age of 18, there was a cover story of Steve Izard in Time, and he was on the cover of Australasian Time magazine. And I cut that cover out and stuck it on my wall.
Wow.
At the age of 17. So Izard was a hero to me in a massive way. And the fact that he was able to do it, and he was just so smooth with the anecdote. But you would have found this too. And my original idea was to have actors and writers and comedians and psychologists and whoever. I wanted to really get a great mix. But when you're working at a talking head show, if a story goes for the longest story you can actually fit in is 45 seconds, or the longest statement you can fit in is 45 seconds.
Right.
Now that is for someone like a Mooney or a Vizard or a Judith Lucy who can really spin a yarn.
How did you work that? Did you know the anecdotes beforehand, or how did you make them?
I would prepare them with questions, and I would write example answers.
Right.
And I would say to them, please practice with your partner or someone else beforehand, because I'm not going to put anything in over 45 seconds. Really, it just doesn't work.
Got it.
And a lot of people just completely ignored me. A lot of actors ignored me, musicians ignored me. They didn't care. But the comedians came in. And so it was normally an anecdote, like a statement or anecdote would go for 15 to 30 seconds, right? That would be the normal kind of length. And the comedians just knew how to strike. If they're going to say something funny, it was 15 to 20 seconds. If they're going to say something sad, it was 15 to 20 seconds. If they're going to make a statement, it was 15 to 20 seconds. Set up, pay off. It was that discipline that they had. And so really, I just wanted to have comedians in the whole time. And, the network would always say, oh, this person is really interesting. And I'd go, I don't give a fuck if they're interesting. Can they tell an anecdote, or can they make a statement in this very strict amount of time? So,
and it was before the age of the jump cut as well.
That's really, exactly. It wasn't any, we weren't taking anything out. I mean, you'd overlay with footage to cut things. We did slim down anecdotes, but essentially it needed to be pretty quick. Mooney's one of the few who can really, you're captivated by because he's dangerous.
Yep. You never know what he's going to say.
Yeah. Kate Lambrook's a bit the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Kate Lambrook can really, you just don't know where she's going to go. And it's captivating and dangerous as well. And that's what you're paying for, is those kind of those kind of people. That was just talking shop. That was the big challenge for me for Agony, and it was, and that's when I really fell in love with the craft of stand up and how those people are actually able to put something together. And you see it now because you're seeing so many stand ups being political. The reason they had the stage is they're able to actually they've taken over from experts. Because they're able to package statements in a very kind of clean and simple way.
And that's this generation too. You need to be concise.
Yeah.
Attention spans are short.
That's right. And it's like this, which is a shame really, because you need the experts, because they will give you one opinion and they'll give you one side of the argument, then another. The comedian's not bothered with that. The comedian's just going straight in with the point of view. Someone once said it should be easy, but really it's not hard to fuck up. And I would spend ages trying to assemble that. That was one of the hardest editing jobs I had in my life.
So you were you conducted the interviews, you narrated it, you found the footage, you were in
and I had a guy called Nathan Wild. Yeah, I was like kind of a
great.
Yeah, and so Nathan was the editor who, it wouldn't have been the show it was without him. And he's just got such an amazing rhythm, and he's able to, lay music in a fantastic way. But he's got the same rhythm as I do, and so I was really grateful. And I pinched him. It was one of those times, I pinched those. You mentioned at the start on Free for Free, I pinched all those crew members, and when I was on the Wedge, there was this difficult sketch that I'd written and acted in, and no one wanted to touch it, but Nathan came in for a few days and he cut it together. It was amazing. And I said, you're coming with me, mate.
Yeah, if you can get it.
If not, now he's too expensive and too hard to get, but yeah.
So you did Agony, which was amazing, and several series of it. That also, won many awards and ran in the US.
You went around, and Finland.
Finland. Did they
do a Finnish version of it?
Was it a Finnish version, or was it your version dubbed or subtitled? Or?
No, it was a Finnish version of it, and you had like the Finnish John Elliott and the Finnish Lawrence Mooney and the Finnish Judith Lucy. It was hilarious.
And your involvement in that, again, they just sent you out of courtesy or out of contractual?
Yeah. It's all courtesy. You just get that your involvement is accepting the check.
Beautiful. Yeah, you ventured into films, as you were saying. You co-wrote and co-starred in the movie Rats and Cats.
It says it came out in 2008 or 2009, but we actually wrote it in 2002, 2003, and then we shot it in 2005. But it was a micro-budget feature film, and Tony Rogers directed it and mortgaged his house to pay for it. So, that you've probably only got one or two of those in you in a lifetime. They're tough because you only read about the micro-budget success stories. The ones that just and you go, well, it seems if you just like pay for a film on your credit card or mortgage your house, you'll be a success and you'll go to Cannes. No, it doesn't happen.
Blair Witch Project, yeah.
Exactly. You think you're going to be Blair Witch, but no.
Yeah.
No, there are failures as well, Albie.
Yeah, correct. But we never hear about them, as you say.
No.
Your career is peppered with so much stuff, so just stop me with any interesting tidbits. You were the head writer on the AFI Awards for several years.
Yes.
You acted in the crime series Rush on Channel 10.
Yep.
Also in Carla Carmetti PD on SBS.
Yeah. Playing a Greek guy, which would not be allowed to happen today.
Right. Okay, that's a whole discussion for another time. You did a little show on 9 called Underbelly.
Yes. Yeah. Played a real guy who went to jail. I'm sorry to that. I'm sorry to that guy, whoever he was. I hope he doesn't take vengeance upon me.
You were part of the cast of Top of the Lake on Foxtel. That must have been amazing. And just because I can't work out how to order it, you've already mentioned it, but you appeared in comedy series The Wedge with Jason and Dalen, who you worked with previously.
Yep, and a little-known actress called Rebel Wilson.
Yeah. Oh,
what happened to her? Yeah.
And Kate Jenkinson.
Yeah, Jenko. Yeah, it's a funny thing that when someone becomes really famous, when your friend of yours becomes really famous, do you keep ringing them? Or do you go, oh, you're famous now, I should give you a maybe you don't want to hear from me anymore?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I was going to ask you that if you ever spoke to AC/DC again.
No, I never did. I never did. No, I didn't speak to them, and I remained friends with Rebel for a while, and we did catch up every now and then. But then when her fame became stratospheric, I thought, I don't know if she wants to hear from me anymore. Maybe I should. Maybe I don't know what the deal is. I don't know what happens when you walk through this, special door and become hugely rich and famous.
Well, you're that to me.
Oh, not at all, mate. Not at all. Very kind of you to say. Yeah, the wedge was really important, but it was, just because we made a show that wasn't very good, let's be honest, doesn't mean we didn't slog our guts out.
Yes.
And try our best. We worked so hard on that show. It was like you had to write 3 or 4 sketches a day. Now everyone thinks, oh, I've got a sketch in me. Well, yeah, everyone does have a sketch in them, but try writing, 15 a week.
Yep.
And we were just like, we were shooting, like sometimes you do 10 sketches a day filming. And
yes,
I remember the directors just going, if they smelt a whiff of a usable take, it was like, we're moving on. There was no kind of, let's investigate this a little further and try and make this as funny as possible. Nah, you got your lines out, we're moving on. And yeah, so it was, but it was game on. It was really competitive, and a lot of people found it fucking tough and dropped out afterwards.
Right.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah, I guess so.
Survival of the most needy. Survival of the people who needed validation the most.
True, but then there's people like you who diversify, so you can move back into writing or producing. Yeah. But you got to work with your hero Visart there.
Yeah, I remember meeting him, and then I went around to his house. It was just like I met him with the group.
Mm-hmm.
And, he would just I remember him just dictating sketches and just them being so funny off the chart. We would just be like, okay, we were just writing madly his jokes down. And he was dictating The Apologizing Sportsman, which Jason was in.
Yes.
And Jason was writing madly down his lines that Visart was dictating. And Visart did a joke, which Jason didn't write down. And Visart said, why didn't you write that one down? And Jason goes, I didn't think it was as funny as the others, Steve. And he goes, write it down. And I remember Jason writing it down.
It's playing the fire, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That show, like you say, it wasn't a great show. It should have been, with the lineage, the cast, and Visart and Ian McFadden. You had all the heavy hitters on it.
Well, A, sketch shows are hugely hard to do.
Yes.
B, sketch shows with big casts are hugely hard to do because it's really hard to get a central point of view going, a central tone.
Yes.
Let's just put SNL aside in its own bracket because it's a bit of a weird beast with being live and everything. But Lorne Michaels, you'd have to say, is the common thread through that. It's his kind of tone. But if you look at the best sketch shows, they're small groups. either small groups or duos generally.
Yeah.
And we had a cast of 15. So there were wildly different comedic tones going through being written sketches with wildly different creative and comedic tones being written every day. And so
Yes.
what was the show? Okay, it was set in a fictitious town, but what was it? What was the tone? Was it one moment Dalen would write a Monty Python style sketch, and then Jason would do something that was a little bit more Sandler-esque,
Yep.
So it was.
Rebel had a different point of view. Kate had a different point of view. Everyone.
Totally. Yeah. So I think you need to have a very strong point of view, and you need to be able to. You need to be saying something very clearly.
Yeah.
And tonally, you need to have tonal clarity.
It's true, and it can work, but the landscape is littered with failed sketch shows. But you can work with a large cast with differing viewpoints, like you say, Lorne Michaels or a Ted Emery in Australia.
Yeah. But you see, you have people like, the Kath and Kim girls and everything. They had a very, that little team. They obviously hung out together and were quite had a central point of view. The Late Show had a central point of view. If you look at the, fast forward with Farzad and Andrew Knight, I think it had a central point of view.
Yes.
Whereas I would say this now, Ian McFadden and Steve Farzad are not. They are completely different points of view.
I agree.
As much as I like Ian, I'm very much in the Farzad camp. And then Steve had to go at various times, so he would be gone, and then Ian would take over, and then suddenly we're making a different show each week, and then Ian would leave, and then Michael Horrocks would come on, and so we're constantly changing commanders.
And then you'd have some crazy arbiter come in.
The arbiter of taste, and John Old sat in a dark room looking at all the sketches and deciding who won and lost. I remember going, well, what is he laughing? Is he laughing at the my footy coach sketch?
Oh, I wish I'd known at the time. I would have been a lot more vocal. In amongst that, you've also been in Crash Burn, Back Burner, all the burns, really, and Tangle and MDA, Bogan Pride, How's That, Rake, Beautiful Lie, Wedding Party, Dr. Blake.
Yes.
That's not nearly all of them, and some were single episodes, but some were recurring characters too.
Yeah. I played in How's That, I played Peter McFarlane, who was a famous cricket writer in Melbourne, who died quite young. He was a friend of my parents. And just bizarrely, I saw Dana Reed, the director, at a party, and she said, "Are you still acting?" I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I might have a role for you." And then the script came in on the Monday, and it was, the offer was for Peter McFarlane. And I went, I knew him.
Wow.
My parents were friends with him.
Not only that, could a role be built perfect for a connoisseur of cricket?
That's right. And the only tragedy for Peter's family is he was like 6'2" and blonde, and I'm not.
Well, that's what television magic's for.
That's right. Yeah. But yeah, that was huge because you get. We're still in the days you get text messages if you're on television, right?
Yes.
It doesn't happen anymore, but. There was more of a group consciousness in those days for the younger listeners. Anyway, I remember being in London hosting the Paralympics with Mooney and Sam Pang, and How's That played, and then the next morning waking up and there was like 100 text messages, and it was like it rated 2.5 million in overnights, which would all up would have probably been about 4 million, right? And so then I realized, this is what happens when you're on a very popular show.
Indulge me a little while longer, because you also wrote plays like The Inner Sanctum, Primrose Hill, and Kissing for Australia.
Yeah. No, I love
it on stage.
Theatre's my first love, but there's no money in it,
Really?
so segued into TV.
Right. And well, before I collapsed from exhaustion, going back to TV, then you wrote No Activity with well-known director Trent O'Donnell and created the series Squinters with him.
Yeah. So that was my LA period. So I wrote Mr. Black and Squinters. So Trent came to me. I think I got Mr. Black up. I mean, you got to understand, I moved to LA.
Yes.
2016 was pretty big because I was doing a lot of work in Australia. I was doing Top of the Lake, and I did a cricket documentary, and things were cooking. And then the arse completely fell out of my life, like career-wise, from August 2016 to maybe April 2018.
Really?
I just wasn't getting any work.
Was that the factor that had you move overseas?
Moving overseas, also at that time, America had really fallen out of love with the straight white Anglo-Saxon comedy writer.
Right.
And they already had enough of them. They weren't going to pull an Australian one in generally. But anyway, I got a few weeks in the No Activity writer's room, and then they gave me a couple of scripts, if I remember rightly, to write. And that was fantastic because it was like, working with all these great comedy writers, from the CBS stable, and comedy and drama writers. And so I wrote a few episodes of that, and then but that wasn't a lot of money. It was all up, it was just 2 scripts. And I remember just being like, it was the first time in my life I was really counting the pennies at supermarkets, right. And just trying to stay alive, because that's
After
the thing with America.
Success.
No one gave a shit over there. You see it all the time, Olby. You see people, who do really well in Australia, and they go, Hollywood, here I am, and you see them bright and sparkly, and then 6 weeks later, you catch up with them again, and it's like the soul has just been ripped out of them. It's like what was playing well in Melbourne, Australia, is definitely not playing well in Hollywood. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it doesn't. And that was a lesson you have to sometimes just learn yourself. Right. There's a mate of mine whose brother's a psychologist in Sydney, and his major client base is Australian actors returning from Hollywood, having not achieved their expectations.
Wow. There's a show in that. We should do it.
That's right. There definitely is. So the arse was completely out of my career. I got 2 scripts from No Activity. That was great. That was just like keeping me in the game a little bit. And Angus Sampson called me up and he said, come to see Midnight Oil are playing down in Koreatown. Do you want to come and see them? And I said, I've got no money, Angus. He goes, come on. Maybe Angus paid for me that night. I can't remember, but I went along. And that night when I came home, there was a letter from Channel 10 saying they've picked up Mr. Black.
Fantastic.
Which is a show that I went to America with. So Amanda and I went to America with Lowdown, and we wrote a script for it, and that fell over at the last minute. And then I had Mr. Black, and Kelsey Grammer was going to play Mr. Black, and he wanted to produce it himself. But my agent at the time, my manager at the time was also a producer. That was how they made their money. So they wanted to keep the production rights. So they said no to Kelsey. I mean, that would have just, I can't tell you how much that would have just fucking set me up in LA. So I just sent it to CJZ, and they sent it on to Channel 10. And so went out to Midnight Oil with Angus Sampson, saw Midnight Oil, had a great night, came home, and there was an email saying from Damien Davis at CJZ saying that Channel 10 want to pick up Mr. Black. And I went, oh, thank God, because I really needed some money. And then the next morning, Trent said, hey, I've just pitched this show to ABC. I've literally written half a page and they've bought it. I can't do it because I've got to do no activity, because he was actually filming the script, filming the show that I've been writing on. And he said, can you run it for me? We'll be co-creators. And I went, yeah, sure. And so
that was Squinters.
Squinters and Mr. Black, that they happened at the same time. Yeah.
Right. And Mr. Black was portrayed by Stephen Curry.
Yeah. I'd written it for a lot. He was meant to be played by Kim, like someone who was 70.
Right.
But Channel 10 wanted Steve, and Steve was amazing. He was great.
He's one of the great comic actors in this country. He doesn't know it yet, but he'll be on this podcast one day.
I'll tell him.
Thanks.
No, his comic timing's impeccable, and he can deliver a line like no one's business. You know, the thing is, if you're on the outside, you might go, why is Stephen Curry always being employed? Aren't we? I don't know. I'm not saying anyone actually says this, but imagine a world in which they might go, aren't we all sick of Stephen Curry? All right. Then you get the opportunity to produce a show, and you get every comic actor in Australia coming in and reading your lines that you've written. Stephen Curry will do them about 10 times better than anyone else. He'll make your best jokes sore, and he'll make your shit jokes good. And that's why he keeps getting hired.
Absolutely. He is a genius. I won't tell him that, but he is.
Yeah, he really is. And he's just born with comic bones and comic timing.
And that's an interesting premise. A former journalist with failing health leads him to move in with his daughter and her boyfriend.
That's right. It was basically a story about a guy, about a woman who falls in love with for want of a better word, like a soft kind of guy. And this guy his father who's in ailing health, he decides that's his last mission in life before he falls off the mortal coil is to break up this relationship. Yeah, we had a great time doing it, but it's been received a lot better in the US than Australia. I just don't think a lot of people could come to grips with the kid from the castle playing an older guy, you know. So that's despite how brilliant Steve was, I think.
So even without Kelsey Grammer in it, it's been well received in the States.
Yeah, our version of it. I think it was my swing at making a commercial TV half hour. Yes. And there's no tradition, not really a tradition of that in Australia, not in the single camera space. Maybe we did have a period in the 80s and 90s when we did multicam sitcoms on commercial TV, but single cam, not. Can you think of any ratings powerhouses that didn't start on the ABC? No, you mentioned the ABC, so Working Dog, obviously, Dead Generation Working Dog, but apart from that, no. No, Kath and Kim, ABC. Yep. Laid, Fisk, all of that's ABC. But so yeah, I thought that maybe I could do something that was that would resonate on a commercial network, a single cam that would. So I was using a lot of those templates that I learned in writers' rooms in the US, and I just tried to do that. But I genuinely think now, going back, that Mr. Black should have been 70. The fact that he was still in his 40s was a little too. It made the character be judged a little more harshly. So everyone can kind of get behind that politically incorrect 70-year-old dad. No one can get behind a politically correct 40-year-old dad. Got it. Yeah. So Kelsey Grammer, but also it's probably a premise that the Americans can get behind more than the Australians. is a traditional sitcom. We're just not interested in traditional sitcoms in Australia. That, you know, it's got to be a little bit more bent, I think, for our sensibility, and which you know, that's my sensibility too. But this is just my swing at trying to do something a little more mainstream. There's been many times where I get actors, agents ringing up saying they want the rights. Never goes anywhere because that's, you know, they always kick tires in the US, but you know, they obviously read it, they obviously watch it and go, yeah, I want to play that character. You know, so.
Right. And speaking of ABC comedies, you've been writing on Austin?
Yeah. So that was I really loved that whole experience because I worked with Darren Ashton on that. It's his baby. Writing for someone like Ben Miller has been one of the joys of my writing life because, like Steve Curry, he really says the lines in the way that you imagine them, sometimes way better. And God, as a writer, that's just heavenly because, you know, you do see your words mangled a lot.
Absolutely. And, you know, in my position as well, I often fret about what I'm doing to somebody's writing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, no, I'm sure you're much more careful. It's a funny thing. I do think a lot of Australian actors just wing it. But then again, you know, Ben Miller came in and he hadn't read the script, so we're doing a table read on the first morning of, I think, of all 8 episodes of Austin. And in one of the episodes, I'd written a chunk of dialogue in Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, very few Australian actors would know what the fuck I was talking about. He hadn't read it before, and he was sight reading it in perfect Latin.
Wow!
And you just go, oh, wow, that's what it's like. You know, you have someone has done I think he did honors in physics at Cambridge. You know, that's what happens when you have one of those actors reading your scripts. So I remember just being really impressed, and you know, so after that, I would really lean towards wordplay and be as pretentious as possible with Ben because he can do it.
Well, it's a very cool series.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You know, it's really interesting for me because I don't have anyone autistic in my life, so it was really interesting to get to know Michael, who is. If people don't know, it was in that show Love on the Spectrum. His name is Michael Theo, which was you know, people on the spectrum trying to find love, and he was a breakout star in that. And then Darren saw him in that and created a sitcom around him, starring him, and that was Austin. And so we would have many conversations with Michael, listening to the rhythms of his speech. Understanding, because what they say with autism, you've met one. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, because there's every autistic person is different, and but the way Michael's autism presents, and this was told to me by his mother, is that he's an old man in a young man's body, so. His references are all old TV shows, and he speaks in perfect sentences, like structurally perfect sentences.
Yes, and it must have been quite a leap of faith to cast him as an actor, and he's a very good actor.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I remember thinking it was a leap of faith as well. And Darren did a lot of work with him, but he's got the confidence too, and he's got the heart and soul of this kid. You know, he doesn't quite know why people are laughing sometimes,
right?
But he doesn't care.
Like your dad.
You're like my dad. It might be. I mean, yeah, that's probably a good way to end it, mate. I should go and make dinner for my wife. But yeah, that's. He was like, we would laugh. Like, he would say something. He goes, "Why is that funny? Why are you laughing?" And
right.
And then he goes, "Oh, doesn't matter," because no one's got a good explanation. It was just the way you said the line, mate. It was funny.
Yeah. Well, as you say, must let you go. I'll ask you one last question to finish with. What's next for you?
So season 2 of Austin That'll be coming out. And I'm currently writing a show called Who the Hell is Hamish, which is you can Google it, I guess. There's a con man in Sydney in all the beaches called Hamish Watson, also goes under the name Hamish McLaren, who ripped off a whole lot of people to the tune of $70 million. It's the biggest fraud case in New South Wales history. He's now in jail.
There's some clickbait about it.
Yeah, and there was a podcast made called Who the Hell is Hamish? And so I'm writing there's a drama. I'm writing that series now, hopefully for Stan. You've
also done Scrublands 4.
Yeah, Scrublands. So yeah, I've been kind of delving in crime a little bit. Crime pays.
Awesome. What a great career. You should be really proud.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thank you. I actually like talking about it because it reminds me I've had a life.
I think I'm supposed to say something about like and subscribe. You know what to do. See you next time.